Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Pooja Makhijani. Pooja is a widely recognized writer for adults across multiple outlets and explores topics like parenting, food, health and wellness, and books and culture. And she's written multiple books for children with titles like the beautiful picture book, Mama's Sorries. She's here today to talk about her newest release, Bread is Love. This beautiful book explores family rituals, baking, and eating good food. And listeners, it is sure to bring you all the feels while reading. I can't wait to talk with her all about it. So we're going to get right to the episode. Pooja, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me and for such a kind and generous introduction.
I am happy to give you that introduction, and I can't wait to talk a bit more about this beautiful book with you. But before we get there, I want to know more about your backstory. You're certainly not a stranger to writing, and I'd love to know about that writing that has led you to the world of children's literature.
Yeah, I think that I have always known I wanted to write picture books. In the eighth grade, we had a creative writing assignment, and my eighth grade teacher, who I'm still in touch with, asked us to write a children's book.
Mm.
And I wrote and illustrated. I don't draw as much as I used to since I was in middle school, but I drew and illustrated a book about two best friends. They were teddy bears, and they did everything together, and it was like 12 pages, and each page was in January, blah, 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 in February, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's when I got this sort of writing bug. Of course, I was in eighth grade. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think that that sort of love of the interplay of words and pictures and just loving art and loving making art also when I was a young person, being a big reader, has always been there,
Yeah.
right? I think that it's kind of intrinsic to who I am as a person. I went to college. I did not study writing. I studied engineering. I was a good immigrant daughter. Um, and then after um, undergrad, I moved to New York City to work in publishing. And I think that gave me the insight into the business and insight into understanding, like, could I do this? Um, and so I did it. And I did a couple things. One, I started freelancing at that time. So I was freelance. I continued to freelance as a journalist and covering all the topics you talked about, parenting and food and family, health and wellness, a lot about books and children's books as well. But then I also started doing a lot of creative writing as well. So that's sort of the early,
Yeah.
early bits of the story. And I guess so much of writing is just being persistent and staying persistent in the face of a ton of rejection because it's sort of a really, there's so many gatekeepers, there's so many people to say no to you, but just to keep doing it. I had a picture book published when I was quite young. That's Mama Sorries, which you mentioned. Um, I continued to be a journalism, essays, sort of all sort of nonfiction. Didn't write as much in the picture book realm, but then the pandemic happened. And I think, as for most people, or as for many people, people sort of started reevaluating the things that were really important to them. And I was like, wait a minute, what was really important to me in my, teens and 20s into my 30s was to write for children. And then so I came back to it. And that's sort of
Yeah.
not that that was like easy. It still took a very long time to write the book and get it published and all of that stuff. And now it's out. But now Bread is Love is the first of three books that is out in the next couple of years.
Yes. Yes, and we're going to sneak peek into some of those that are coming after Bread is Love, but let's let's go to this beautiful book.
Thank you.
This is a book, I said in the introduction that it gives you all the feels. And it is. It's a book where I feel like, or I felt like when I was reading your book, that time just sort of slowed down. Like this act of making bread, this act of doing something beautifully ritual, this act of just enjoying what you were doing. I felt like the book just brought all of that to readers. And I would love for you to tell listeners, of course, what the book is about, but where the inspiration came from for this book as well.
Yeah. The book is about, it's called Bread is Love, and the book is about um this sort of ritual that this mother and her two children have that every week they bake bread together. And it follows their journey of, we're into their home for this one weekend and they're making sourdough, right? So they pull out the starter, they like ferment the dough, they shape the dough and so on and so forth, and sort of the journey that they go along the way and sort of observation and thinking about science and thinking about what bread really means, and dreaming about bread, right? And so those are sort of the other themes that kind of float through the book. The inspiration was I became a bread baker about 10 years ago, and it was in the midst of a not so nice divorce, as most divorces are not so nice.
Mhm.
And it gave me a way I wasn't a baker before that, except for, I don't know, like boxed brownies or the occasional, right? Um, and I found bread baking accidentally. I think I was just like up late surfing the internet, found an Instagram video or a YouTube
Yeah.
video, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And it sort of became, I, it quickly became a way for me to find a new rhythm in my life,
Hmm.
just like the physicality of it all. And then, of course, it grew into like, so a great mental health practice, like a kind of moving meditation. It allowed me to work out some feelings. You get to punch the dough every now and then.
Yeah.
But it also, and then it also became a way for me to feed other people and so on and so forth. And it just became a really important part of my life, even beyond the transition of like the divorce and kind of
Yeah.
rethinking and rebuilding what family looked like. Again came the pandemic, right? And everybody all of a sudden was baking bread. And
Yes.
it became just a really curious thing of me to think about, like, why is this substance, why is this food become so,
Yeah.
um, why is everyone into it? Like, what's going on, right? And then you start thinking about how bread is universal. Bread is something that exists across all cultures everywhere. It's like the first food that,
Yeah.
human beings ever made out of grain, right? Um, so it got me obsessed with like kind of all of these things. And that's what really, um, so it was a bit of my own home ritual of baking bread every week. But also thinking about what is bread, right? Why is it so fundamental to who we are as human beings?
Yeah. I love that your journey or your obsession or your rituals around bread were pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Because one of the things I often say, like tongue in cheek, is like as an educator in the pandemic, we were going online, we were stressed, we had kids at home. The pandemic was hard for everyone, but I feel like for educators, I want to selfishly say it was doubly hard because of all of the moving parts. And I would see online people are, enjoying and seeking into their sourdough and feeding them. And I'd be like, I don't have time for my sourdough. And I realize now, as I saw it, that it wasn't that they were making sourdough, is that they were giving themselves the gift of this time and this ritual and this decompression that I so desperately wanted. And so
Yeah.
I love that you talk about that right now because it isn't just bread. It's not,
No.
that may be on the outset what it is, but the symbol of
Yeah.
what it represents really is so much more.
Yeah. And if it makes you feel any better, Stephanie, I saw a ton of people start because there was like a lack of sourdough, I'm sorry, flour and yeast, if you remember, that was one of the things that were running out in the grocery store, especially in early 2020. And so so I saw a lot of sourdough starters. I saw fewer loaves of bread. So people got to the sourdough phase. So if
Yes.
it makes you feel any better, you didn't, it wasn't.
Yes. Well, and I am gluten free.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I'll plug about your book that I was so happy to see, like I love when a book comes with a recipe. I'm a big fan of making a book an experience when possible. And not only did you have a bread recipe, but then you gave a link to a gluten-free bread recipe, which made me very happy that I will try. For now, I'm still tethered to the bread maker. I'm very afraid to do anything outside of it. And even the bread maker, Pooja, only has a 30% success rate with me. But you're right. It's more than just bread. It really is a practice. And your book so beautifully conveys that with the process from start to finish. And what I really loved, because it's a part of life, is the imperfections that can happen from start to finish and how those are just as beautiful as the idealized versions. And I'd love for you, if you could talk about that, because you say, is it going to be magic or mayhem? And I
Yeah.
love that.
I think it's really, I think you're an educator, you know this. I think so much of kids, what they're here, and not only kids, adults too, is all about like sort of productivity and product and like what and perfection, right? Like it's just really detrimental, especially when you're thinking about making art, and bread is art, as I say in the
Yes.
book. But I think that the joy of making a thing comes in doing the work, right? It's like being with it, seeing it, touching it, feeling it. If you're a painter, looking at the colors, looking outside, whatever it is, it's the process. It is the practice,
Yeah.
which is the joyful part and the part in which the magic happens.
Yes.
Right. And I think especially, so it was one of sort of writing against that, this thing that I think is actually can be really harmful for all of us, right? Like we are not our productivity, we are not our product. We are all the other things that make up us ourselves. And life is extremely messy and all of that, right? And that's what makes it worth living. So it was about that partly. And I think the second part, and this is mm, a more maybe not while I was writing it, but now that I'm sort of talking about the book and thinking about it, in the age of AI where people can create writing or like a story in seconds, which that's not magical. That's not interesting.
Yeah.
And so it's also about thinking about how time and togetherness and feeling are also important to living.
Yeah. Yeah. Are most
And all
important.
the unexpected things, all the mistakes, quote unquote, all the like failures, quote unquote,
Yeah.
that's what life's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. And often those are the things that we didn't know we actually needed or ended up pointing us in the very most right
Right.
direction.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think young people, I don't think, or us as adults, realize that until we look back, right?
That is very true. Yes.
But
Yeah.
that's okay too.
Yeah. And what a beautiful lesson or a beautiful idea to encounter earlier, right? In childhood, reading this book of, oh, okay, so the mistakes, those are really wonderful too. Those are still really tasty too. And while young readers may not understand that bigger picture at first, like the seed's planted. The seed is
Exactly.
planted there. And that's the beautiful thing about picture books. That's why everybody still needs them. There's something for all of us that we can just hang on to that usually makes life better in
Yeah.
some way. And that is definitely true of your book.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the illustrations. Oh, they're gorgeous. Tell us about the illustrator, the illustrations, what you love. I'd love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah. Lavanya Naidu is an animator and illustrator. She's based in Australia. And when the sketches first came in, they she's just been incredible to work with and collaborate with. When the first sketches came in, they were just sort of this like, they had no color. They were sort of black and white digital sketches, and you could already sense the coziness of the space that she had created. And what was really interesting, so when I had imagined this text, when I was writing it, I had imagined myself and my daughter, right? That's in our kitchen, because that's what we do as writers. We kind of draw from our own points of reference. When the illustrations, these sketches came back, she had created a secondary character. So there is a child character who's the narrator and the mother, and then there's a baby character, a toddler character, who has adds so much energy to the text, but I didn't imagine her. That's all Lavanya. And brought and if you look at the facial expressions of this toddler character, it's like its own arc, a wordless arc that kind of weaves its way throughout. And you can see how she reacts with the older sibling, with her interactions with her mother. She's her own character that I never created. That is an illustrated character. And that's all of Anya. And then, in later drafts where she started putting in the color, and her mastery of light. This is a story that takes place over a course of a weekend, right? And there's a nighttime and there's a next morning and all of that. And that's all so palpable, and like you can feel the passage of time just through her use of light.
Yeah,
I could go on and on. I mean, she's just incredible.
it was.
And just amazing.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said about the emotion that you see on the page and that passage of time over the weekend that makes it feel like time is kind of slowed down yet moving
Mhm.
in terms of this ritual for the reader. Like the illustrations, they're just so beautiful and complement it perfectly. I know there are certain ways that certain authors find their illustrator or the publisher or the editor. And I don't know what kind of magic it is, but it is magical when those two things really come together on the page for the reader.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, just every stage where I had the opportunity to see what like the cover would look like or what the um end pages would look like and so on and so forth was just it was just magic. Magic is such a good word for it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I take photographs of a lot of my bread and put them on social media. I have a private social media account for friends and family, and I allowed Lavanya access to some of those pictures, and some of those photographs are illustrated into the text, and that's really
Oh,
exciting.
oh, it's like Easter egg. I love when I know
Yeah.
something like that about the book. This is exactly why I love these conversations. Because now looking at it, you just, yeah, obviously the book is always a part of the author and there are pieces that the author leaves, but that is like a magical little thing now to know about, to see. Now, your daughter must find that so wonderful as well, right? To know that this story really is about the ritual that you both share.
Yeah, and like all these little pieces of her are in it, whether in
Yeah.
words or illustrations. She's a teenager now, so she probably doesn't want me to talk about her too much,
True.
but she
Understand.
does appreciate it.
I know how that goes. So as you think about your book getting out into the world, what is your hope for the book or your hope for readers who get the book into their hands?
I think it's multifold. I think one, I would love them to go into the kitchen and try something
Yeah.
and make bread. Whether they use the recipe at the end of the book or find a recipe on their own, it doesn't really matter to me. But, I think there's so much togetherness that happens in the kitchen. I've always loved to cook and garden and all these things food related. I've been a food writer as a journalist. This is a huge part of my life. So I think that's really important. So that's number one. Number two, I would love for them to like develop their own ritual around food, whatever that may look like. And I suggest some things in an author's note. I say like focaccia Fridays or like a birthday
Yeah.
bread instead of, birthday cake. So whatever that looks like for their families and family, and also family, whatever that look like, right? Whatever that community looks like.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that, I mean, this is kind of the bigger thing that maybe readers will take away now or 10 years from now, is that like have fun and experiment and make things and use your hands. And like that's just so important.
Yeah. I love what you said in the book, not to spoil any of the lines for readers, but more bread, more joy, more love.
Exactly.
Yeah, that bigger picture of what this book can offer. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, I know we're talking about bread is love, but as you mentioned earlier, there's more coming for you. Can you give us a little sneak peek into what listeners could expect next from you?
Yeah, so in June I have a book coming out. It's called Together for Mama, and it is a about a little girl who it's through the point of view of a young girl. Her name is Asha. Her mom, she's going to be a big sister. So the baby has just come home and she's so happy. She's going to be the perfect big sister. She's going to sing, she's going to dance, she's going to do this, she's going to do that. But her mom comes home not very happy.
Mhm.
And so it is about, it doesn't say postpartum depression in the text, but it does say it in the author's note. So it frames it for the caregivers and the educators a little bit. But it's also about sort of how her family rallies around to help care for this mother and by extension, our child narrator and the new baby. And it's
Yeah.
really a story about a family, but it's also a story about sort of our collective care of mothers and children.
Yeah. Oh, sounds beautiful. And that is coming in June,
That is
correct?
coming in June.
Okay.
And the illustrator, her name is Nadia Alam, and she is amazing as well. I've been really lucky to work with some amazing illustrators.
Yeah. So where is the best place that listeners can find you online to keep up with these new releases and what might come next?
Yeah, I think the best place to find me is at my website, which is poojamakijani.com. And I have a monthly newsletter in which I like interview people and share links and of course share news and information about myself. I also invite if any of your readers are in New Jersey, I have a whole bunch of events on my website. So if they're listening to this in February, March, or April, hopefully we can meet up.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I will have to take a look at that because we are pretty close, and I've been known to drive a couple of hours just to see a new bookstore or a new event. So thank you so much, Pooja, for this conversation and this beautiful, beautiful book. I'm so
Thank
excited to be part of your launch and putting it to the world, and I can't wait to see the next ones as well.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.